Welcome to another episode of the House Huddle Podcast. Here are your hosts, Rob Schwartz and Justin Onayemi, two Bears fans who decided talking into a microphone was better than shouting at their television.
Welcome into a emergency. This is a good emergency, maybe. We'll have to figure that out here in a second. Emergency.
Giving away your take already.
I know. House Huddle Podcast. This is obviously Rob Schwartz, and I am co-hosting, and always with me is Justin Onayemi. It's a pretty late night here, but had to get this one in.
Yeah, we're actually going to get two in, but we'll talk about this one first, and then we'll act like the other one's a brand new thing. But the emergency is big Bears breaking news.
Yeah.
And that is that they traded Robert Quinn to the Philadelphia Eagles for a fourth-round pick. So I've already been able to hear lots of different takes on this, but you and I have not discussed it at all. So I feel like we've discussed other things leading up to all of this that maybe make me think I know where you're coming from on this, and you might feel the same way. But we definitely wanted to talk this one out on the House Huddle. So why don't you kick it off, Rob?
Yeah, so I think this was a really good trade for both sides. I do wonder if Ryan Poles' hesitation to trade him before the deadline versus in the offseason maybe cost them some draft capital. Coming off an 18.5 sack season, you go to trade him on the high side instead of the low side. Are you going to get more than a fourth-round pick at that point? At that time, people were talking potentially a second. That was more on the Bears side. People were talking at least a third. So could you have walked away with a third-round pick earlier had you traded him, before the season started? Maybe. I don't know. But for Ryan Poles to get a fourth now when, the talk was at best a fifth, maybe even a sixth, and that's the point. Like, why would you even trade him? Now, I know it's the Philadelphia Eagles. They're, the best team right now record-wise in the NFL. They're clearly on the way to make the playoffs. They're going to be, whether they win the Super Bowl or not, they're going to be one of the later picks in the fourth round, which, it's going to be more closer to a fifth-round pick than a third-round pick. But still, I give Ryan Poles a lot of credit. And I do think that this was a good move for the Philadelphia Eagles because they added a pass rusher to the defense that's already been playing really well. Quinn isn't going to be the main attraction. He's going to, not have to take as many double teams over there. And hopefully that opens it up for him. I want to see him succeed. I have no ill will towards him whatsoever.
Well, the Eagles still play the Bears this season, so I don't want to see him succeed that week.
Yeah, December 18th, I'm sure. Well, Robert Quinn doesn't seem like the type of guy to, circle the calendar for a revenge game. He's just kind of like, I'm going to go off and...
Yeah, he's a tough guy to read, to be honest. But I'm not even going to really talk too much about the Eagles side of this. I mean, I kind of agree with what you said and the way you analyzed it, but purely looking at this from the Bears standpoint, I'm excited about this trade. You said it well with, could they have gotten more in the offseason? We have no idea. It takes two to make a trade. And Robert Quinn, throughout his career, I don't have his career numbers pulled up, so I can't completely back this up. But I would say he's had a trend of big season, not so big season, big season, not so big season. Last year was a big season. Yeah. He set the Bears a single season record for sacks. But this year, 1 sack and not too many pressures. I mean, it's not because sacks can be deceptive sometimes. I mean, if you're getting to the quarterback and not getting a sack, but you're causing chaos, it doesn't show up in the stat sheet, but it matters. That's not the impression I've been getting from him. If anything, some of the other guys on that line I've been more excited about. And you never know, how much attention is he drawing when offensive coordinators are planning to play the Bears. I don't think Robert Quinn is a guy you're game planning around, but he's a veteran. He's put up production in the past. So, that must mean teams still wanted him. Because I was at that point like you, where if all you're getting is a sixth, is it really worth it? Now, the strange thing is, and we're going to do a separate podcast to kind of break down the Monday night game, but everyone's feeling really good about things right now.
Yeah.
And so is that the time to make a trade of a veteran player like that? I mean, the deadline is Tuesday, so you only have another week to decide, and I think that was just too good of a deal to pass up.
It was, but to that point, we saw we saw Roquan Smith today in his press conference. When the news broke, it was brought up in his press conference, and he got choked up. He got emotional. Took a minute, tried to, reclaim himself, and unfortunately, it got to the point where he couldn't handle it. He ended up leaving his press conference, and I think everyone there understood. They were all just like, we'll catch you on the next one. Not a big deal. So kudos to the reporters for not trying to push it any further. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned the pressures. I actually have his stats here. He has 1 sack for the year. He has only 8 tackles this season, and his pressures, he only has 4 pressures for the whole year. Like that's rough. I mean, and again, he's getting double teamed a lot more than anyone else on the line.
Right.
But then you look at, in all honesty, the guy who's played the best is Trevis Gibson. Trevis Gibson has 2 sacks, 11 combined tackles, but he has 10 pressures.
Right. And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
A pressure is as good as a sack sometimes. A pressure can be better than a sack sometimes.
It could lead to turnovers.
It can lead to turnovers. So, I mean, his numbers are underwhelming. But if you're the Eagles, their sights are set much higher than the Bears. Yeah. They're looking for, in that one game that makes the difference between winning a Super Bowl and not winning a Super Bowl, could a veteran like Robert Quinn come up big for you? They're hoping yes.
Yeah.
And you say that 4th round pick, because of how good we anticipate the Eagles season to go, that might end up being almost a 5th. Well, that's where the Bears have been doing their magic. I think these mid-round picks, you can really find value. And this is still a very young team. Obviously just got a lot younger.
Yeah.
But there's holes to fill. I mean, even guys you like who are playing well, they haven't earned anything for the future. And so to get another pick that could matter, I was just super excited about it. Now, you mentioned Roquan's reaction. How do other players feel about this? Other players who are veterans, who maybe are coming up on expiring contracts, who are expendable, how do they feel about this? But I want to say, and we say it a lot, this is a business. The players must know that. The only person I'm not totally sure would know something like that is Roquan, because he's representing himself.
That's true.
Rather than having an agent who kind of, says, hey, this is what I'm hearing. This is what's out there.
Right.
But, I don't know. I feel trading Roquan would be way different than trading Robert Quinn.
Yes, very much so. Younger player, guy who you can envision being here in the future, even when the window is open, right? Robert Quinn wasn't going to be that guy. He still had 2 more years on his contract, but he's going to be 33. Like, he's at the downside of his career. He can't be an every down player, and he's the guy who's seeing the most snaps. He's seeing 68% of the defensive snaps.
Those should go to a younger, hungrier player.
Yeah, and then the next guy behind him is Al-Quadin Muhammad at 58%. Trevis Gibson,
maybe not him.
Trevis Gibson at 44%, and Dominique Robinson at 38%, and then Jonathan Kingsley, he's only been in 2 games, has a total of 7% of the snaps. So Gibson is probably going to get closer to that 55% mark like Muhammad, and you would think Robinson's probably going to get closer to the 45% where Gibson is now. And I think this move was made easier because Dominique Robinson has come along faster than I think most people expected.
Absolutely. Now, let me go back on something, though, because you agreed with me, but I think we have different reasons and perspectives. The reason I'm saying trading Roquan would seem a lot tougher is what he's doing in this season. Because, last week we were really feeling low after losing to the Commanders and dropping to 2-4, coming up on the part of a schedule where you...
Bayless Jones!
Well, right.
Catch that hunt!
We don't need to relive that. But here's the thing. They were 2-4, coming up on what everyone, except for you and I, thought was like an automatic loss.
Yep.
So that'd be 2-5. Going to the Cowboys, let's be honest, 2-6.
Yep.
Then the Miami was coming to town,
With
probably
Tua back.
with Tua back and
Yep.
going 2-7. And granted, those are after the deadline. But the outlook of a team that's in that position, it's all about the future.
Yes.
Now, they win this game in New England. I think they're feeling really good about things. And now you're 3-4. You're in that mucky water where we're going to, for weeks and weeks and weeks, see they're in the hunt, right?
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, they got the same record as the Packers. That's a whole different podcast. I'd love to listen to some of those. Maybe they have Bears ads or something in their breaks.
Maybe.
But my point is, the performance of Roquan on the field has impacted games.
Yeah.
He's impacted games that have been wins. And you and I both predicted this as an 8-win team. 8 wins for this team, especially if young players are playing well, that is a thing to shoot for.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And Roquan is providing stuff. Now, if the right deal comes along,
Sure.
it's the right deal because he's on an expiring contract. You know, you have no guarantees you're going to be able to re-sign him. But what would that send? What message does that send to the team when now not only are you getting rid of a veteran who's kind of on an obvious, position to be traded, but you're giving up on the season. I didn't feel like you're giving up on the season by getting rid of Quinn.
No. Now, the one thing, though, is he was one of the voted captains. Robert Quinn was. So, therefore, he clearly has the ear of a lot of the people in that locker room. It's going to be a tough loss. I mean, Ryan Poles had his interview today. He did a press conference about the trade. It wasn't live, but I was following along on Twitter. And he had made multiple comments about the fact, like, this is tough. It's a business. You don't want to put the emotions into it. And it's hard coming off of a Monday night win, like when the emotions are high.
Mm-hmm.
He said all of what you just said, but he said the exact same thing you said. My job is to be able to produce and always look to the future. And he knows where this team is at.
Right.
Like, he has an honest assessment of where this team is at. He's not some convoluted, let's just say, meatball Bears fan who's out there that's like 3-4, we're tied with the Packers, let's go, we're going to the Super Bowl. Like, he knows that they have Dallas, who's only got one loss on the season. He knows that they have Miami, who has been fantastic with Tua under center.
And that's not to mention Buffalo,
Philly.
Now that they got the upgrade of Robert Quinn, too.
Yeah, Minnesota again.
Well, it's good to know that, you would expect it's his job. But not everyone does their job the way you hope, that he can keep that perspective and that level head.
Well, and let's just say we do know who is a fan, and that's George McCaskey. And if he's in Ryan Poles' ear, constantly nagging of, like, saying things along the lines of, oh, this is great. Oh, we're going to get to hear. Oh, no, we can't do this because you need. If he's a meatball fan sometimes, so he could be an issue.
Well, I want a GM whose focus is on winning a Super Bowl. And that doesn't mean every year you're thinking that your team is going to win the Super Bowl.
Right.
It would be incredibly unlikely for the Bears to win the Super Bowl this season. So many weird things would have to happen and just oddities for that to happen. However, you make a deal like this, we already know they're going to have a lot of cap space next year. And before we cut this short off, I'd like to know, how does this impact that?
So they're up to about somewhere around 130 million now, because what they're eating in cap next year is less than the 13 million that
they would have
been, or it's almost 14 million, 13.9. Okay. I want to say it's like 6 or 7 million off the top of my head. I don't recall. Okay. So there's another, 5-6 million right there. That's a player.
So, exactly. So he's looking at it as a 4th round pick.
Yep.
Which you never know. That could get spun into a 3rd round with
Eddie
something.
Jackson's a 4th round pick.
Or you stay in that slot, or you trade back. So he's thinking that's an asset now.
Yeah.
And the $6 million is an asset or two. Yeah. Right? So those things, those players, far more make it likely for a future Super Bowl than Robert Quinn would have meant to a Super Bowl this year.
For sure.
And I want a GM whose mind is always on, we're going to win a Super Bowl or 2 or 3 because of, making the right moves at the right time, even when it's the difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
Now, again, do you trade Roquan? Do you trade Montgomery? I think those are different questions because they are producing on the field at a different level.
They are. Now,
And you really could lose the locker room if you start just wholesale, it's over.
Is Eddie Jackson on the hot seat now for being traded? I mean, you talk about a guy he's not quite on an expiring contract, but a veteran
who would slot in?
I mean, there's no one at this point.
See, that's the difference, though. You named it really well.
DeAndre said Houston Carson is not like showing up like Dominique Robinson.
Exactly. And he's not a rookie. Exactly. You already kind of know what you have.
He's like a 7-year vet.
So I think this was the perfect trade for all the reasons we just mentioned, including now younger people are going to slot in. The only thing, and it's not something you and I would know, I don't even know if it's something beat reporters would know, but what is his impact in the locker room? Yeah. As a veteran, what does he bring to those meetings, the D-line meetings? You know what I mean? Like, even if his play has taken a step back, his experience and knowledge might be what's helping a Dominique Robinson.
Yeah, I wrote about this in my article this afternoon after the trade had happened on, okay, how does the defense change? And I explained, the breakdown of the percentages and the stats and how I don't think they're going to have a problem statistically, but you're not going to replace his leadership. You're not going to replace his mentorship. And that's going to be where it comes into play. But the hope is that they've had enough of it. We're going into week 8, that at this point they've taken that and they can move forward. Right.
And I also think, with Eberflus as a defensive coach, I think he takes pride in just give me guys and I can scheme them. I can coach them. And so this will be that challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. It was an interesting day. I think it was a good move on both sides. I'm happy about it.
Until December 18th.
December 18th is circled on my calendar.
There you go.
But yeah, that's all I had on it. I think there's really nothing else to discuss.
That's right. Keep it short.
Yeah.
Dallas Huddle, short.
All right.